Hi guys, my name is Nilendu and welcome to this tutorial which will show you how to create a simple application which uses JPA to connect to database. So in the previous tutorial we had discussed about what are the differences between JPA and Hibernate and also what exactly they are. So I had mentioned that JPA is a ORM which helps you to map your Java objects to rows in the table. So now in this tutorial we will see how to create an application in which we will use JPA to map our Java object to database row, and we will insert one row into the table using JPA. So let's see how to do that. So in this tutorial we will make two assumptions. First assumption is that your computer has Derby installed. So Derby is one of the databases which is a very lightweight database and it's open source based. So in my example I'm going to use Derby, but if you want you can use any other database also. And second assumption is that you are aware of how to use Maven to build projects, and your Eclipse, the IDE which I'm going to use, is configured with Maven. So let's see how to start. So I will right click and I'll say new, other. Let's search for, okay, Maven is already here. So I'll say Maven project. I'll just say next. And I will select Maven archetype quick start, which is the simplest Maven project. Say next. And I now need to just provide the group ID. So I'll say com.nilendu.jpa project, and we need to give an artifact ID. So again let's say JPA Hello World for now, and now it will create package structure. So for now let's only have com.nilendu.jpa project. As you can see here, it's creating the project. Maven is creating the project. So now it has created a project and it has got the source folder and a package, default package configured. And if we see the Maven dependency, we can see that by default it has got JUnit 3.8 as dependency. Now let's open the pom.xml and now we will go to the source. So this group ID is the one which we gave earlier, com.nilendu.jpa project, and artifact ID is JPA Hello World. Now if we see the dependencies, it has got a dependency on JUnit. Now since we need to work on JPA, we need JPA related dependencies, and we also need a client driver for Derby, so we need to add that dependency also. So I have already found the dependencies, and I'm going to copy from here. Copy it here and paste it. Okay. Okay, now let's see what are the dependencies. So I have added a Derby client, then I have added a JPA implementation of Hibernate. So if you remember, JPA is a specification, so we need an implementation, and that implementation will be provided by this artifact. And we also need one more dependency which is going to contain JPA specific classes. Now what we will do is we will save it, and now it's building it. So now if you see this Maven dependency, all the required jar files have been added. Okay, so the next step to configure is we need a persistence.xml which should be present in meta-inf resources/meta-inf. So we will create a folder. And this is created, so we will create one more folder within this. Here we need to add a file called persistence.xml. So I already have one sample file which I will copy and paste it over here. So as you can see, persistence.xml is there, so I will remove the text extension. We also need to do one more thing. Presently this folder is not in the class path, so we will add it. So we'll right click, build path, configure build path, and go to source, and we will add this folder. So we will add resources and just say okay. So if you see, now this folder is present over here. I'll say okay, and this sign tells me that resources is in the class path now. So now let's see what is there in the persistence.xml. So persistence.xml mentions a persistence unit called the name of the unit here we have named as persistence unit, and it has got some properties. For example, persistence.driver, which is a Derby driver. Then we have a URL. So if you have Derby in your local host, URL will look like this unless you have changed the port number. And I'm not going to use any user ID and password, so they are left blank. And this tells Hibernate to create the table if it is not there. So this is the property. If the table is not there, it will create it. And I don't think we need this, so we can remove this. So now what we will do is we create a student class. New class. So this is the class which will be stored or mapped to as a row in the database table. So since this is going to be managed by JPA, we will add a entity annotation which will tell JPA that this object of this class should be managed by JPA. So we will import the package. Now we will have few fields here like private string grade. So we have three fields. We will generate the getters and setters. So come here, generate getters and setters, and select all, just say okay. So all the getters and setters are generated. Now we also need a ID for this class which will be ID mapped to ID in the database table. So there is an annotation called ID. Okay, so this is our student class which has got three fields: roll number, name and grade. And you can see there is nothing else, just getters and setters. Okay, now we will create a test class to test this. So we'll say student test. We have a public static void main method. Okay, so we will instantiate a student object. Student dot set name. Let's call him King. Student dot set grade. Let's say it's class 3. Okay, so now we will need to make sure that JPA can store the student object to the database. So for that, we need to ensure that we open some kind of a connection with the database, and for getting the connection we need a manager which will manage the connections to the database. So what we will do is we will use a entity manager factor. So entity manager is a kind of a connection to the database. So we will use entity manager factory. Let's call it EMF equals, now persistence dot create entity manager factory. So we are asking it to create the factory. So now what should be the value over here? Now let's go to persistence.xml, and whatever value you have as the unit name, you have to use it. So I'm copying it and I'll delete this. I'll add it over here. Okay, now what we will do is we will create an entity manager from the factory. We'll instantiate an entity manager from the entity manager factory. Was EMF dot create entity manager. Okay, now we have to import it, which I have done. So next what we will do is we will say we will start the transaction. So em dot get transaction dot begin. So it will start the transaction. So next step is to make a call on the entity manager so that it can save or persist the student object. So what we will say is em dot persist, and we will give the student object as the parameter. Once this is done, so now we will close the transaction. So we will say em dot get transaction dot commit and em dot close. So we are going to close this entity manager. Now we know that this student object will be saved in the database as one of the rows. So we will create one table into the database, and that table will be called student. We'll see how to do that. So in Derby there is a Derby client called IJ, which can help us. Let's see. So now we will connect to the database, and the URL will be usually same as this one. So we will copy this from here and we will give a single quotes, paste it, and give a semicolon because it is end of the statement. So our client has already connected to Derby. So just be aware that if you are going to use this, you should start your Derby server using start network server before you attempt to connect. So in my case, Derby is already started, and as you can see, it's already listening on port 1527. So now we will create a table called student. Create table student, and let's see what are the values we have. So we have 3 fields: roll number, name, and grade. So we'll have the same thing: roll number int, then name, so let's keep it 20 for now, and grade varchar 20 again. So as you can see, it says 0 rows inserted, which means the table has been created. So let's do a very simple select statement. Select star from student. So it is returning me the table with 0 rows. Okay. Now what we will do is we will run this test and see whether it is able to insert it or not. So we'll run as Java application. So there is some issue. Okay, so we have not, it's saying employee because it was copied. So we will have to add this student class in the persistence XML. So the package is com Nilendu JPA, so we'll copy it and go here and we'll paste it, and we have saved it here. So now let's run it again. Okay, so this time we didn't see any errors. So what we will do is we'll go again to this Derby and see. We'll run the previous command, and as you can see, it has entered or inserted the Java object as the row, as one of the rows in the student table. So friends, that was a very simple application which used JPA to insert a Java object as a row into a table. I hope this was useful, and in case you have any questions or comments, please write below in the comment section, and please don't forget to press the like button in case you have liked my video. Thank you.